Well, let's jump in here with the structures of the eye. We spent some time, you and I, on this on Wednesday. And we'll finish up, hopefully today. I don't see why we shouldn't finish up today. This is the very end of the chapter. Someone give me a page where you are there. Because we've rolled through the general senses as far as, the beginning of the eye is where I want you to be. 280. Sorry, 280. Shh. We rolled through the general senses, temperature and touch, pressure, pain. We moved into the special senses, talking about how you smell, olfactory sense, your taste, the gustatory, your hearing, right? And now we are in, your balance, we've got the vestibular sense. And now we're into the eye, vision. Spend some time, yes? It's still Wednesday, is the plan. Yep, still Wednesday is the plan. We spent some time on Wednesday discussing the actual structures that you can see here. We'll go into some more detail. Remembering that on your focus, your study guide, structure-wise, being able to follow a beam of light through the eye structures. So what it goes through when it enters, cornea, and you keep moving back until it gets to those cells that send the signal to the brain. We'll talk a bit more about this today. Okay? This diagram that is here, that is one that you would need to know for the test. It could be one that I put on. The entire thing, yes, sir. Okay? So let's talk about it. You have these three distinct layers, or they call them tunics. Sounds like a Bible word, right? Bible word like for coat, right? Covering. And the outer one is thick. It's fibrous. Okay? The most of the eye is the white part of your eye they call the sclera. Right? When you look at someone's eye, most of it's white. And then the round part in the very front is the cornea. And that is the transparent part that light would enter in through that cornea. You see that layer outside here? Coming in. The optic nerve, which is the main nerve for the eye that gets the signals that makes you actually see, as well as all the blood vessels, those come through the sclera in the very back part of the eye. So again, here's the optic nerve in the back, the posterior edge of the eye. And you see that nerve goes through that sclera as this outside layer, the white part, right? The middle tunic, the next layer down, if you peel off the sclera, then you get to this vascular part where all the blood vessels, the things that actually bring blood to the eye. And they call that the choroid coat, this vascular, darkly pigmented area inside the eye. And it nourishes things, and it keeps the inside of the eye dark. Remember I was telling you that when we look into your eyes, and you look at the pupil, right? That small little black disc in the very middle of your eye. The pupil is not actually a structure. The darkness you see is the inside of your eye. And it's dark. Why is it dark? Why do we not want outside light, other than what we're focusing on, to get into the eye? Well, it could damage it, sure. So it'd be pollution, right? You couldn't see what you wanted to see if all this other stuff was coming in. Does that make sense? Have you ever held your hand up to a really bright light and put a flashlight under your hand and you can see through your hand, the blood vessels and stuff? Yeah. If your eye was this same thickness, light could just get in like that. You with me? And pollution is a good way of putting that, Matthew. Okay? So that's the choroid coat. And again, as you're looking, can you see that the sclera? Can you see that the sclera is here, right? This outside coat. And then choroid coat is just underneath that red layer. Are you with me? These three layers, we've gotten two so far. Outermost would be sclera. Middle is choroid coat. And then moving into the innermost. Before we get to the innermost, we'll talk about the ciliary body. That's that ring that forms around the iris. So if we look here, the ciliary body is here, right? So it's this piece right here, that the iris and the lens are attached to. We'll talk about those things in just a moment. We talked about the iris already though, right? What's the point of the iris? You got it. Opening and closing the hole, the pupil. Again, even though the pupil is not actually something, it's just that hole, that opening. And the iris itself is not the muscles. The ciliary body contains those muscles that will contract and relax, that will open and close. Yes, ma'am?
Why do people's eyes turn like
Bluish-gray when they're blind? That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if it's something to do with some sort of protein buildup that's there because the eye is not functioning properly. I don't know. That kind of cloudiness you're talking about that many blind people's eyes have, you're saying. Yeah, I don't know. Shocking. All right, and again, the lens we'll talk about in a moment, but the ability for that lens to change shape, it gets stretched and it gets thicker depending on where you're looking. We'll talk about this as to if I'm looking close here at Dominique or if I'm looking back there. The lens literally changes shape to allow that to occur, those muscles in your eye. And that's called accommodation, that ability to focus and change. Again, that iris, like we said, adjusts the amount of light entering the pupil. And the front part, this anterior chamber of the eye, is filled with this aqueous humor. Aqueous meaning what? Water. Humor is liquid. So it's this watery liquid. Okay? Yeah. A watery liquid. Yeah. Okay? Again, that picture I showed you this previously of your iris. I think irises are beautiful. Like if you Google, you can see some great pictures of just the colors. My wife has beautiful eyes. This brown ring. But if you want to tell my wife that she's like, you want to get on a good side, tell her eyes look green. She loves green. I don't know. If you want to say Mrs. Hess, oh, Mrs. Hess, with that sweater, your eyes look very green. Of course, now she can hear this on YouTube, but yes. She always wanted a green-eyed, red-haired boy, baby, and that's what she got first. So, it's well done, Mr. Hess. Right? Yes. Okay. But if you look closely, many people's eyes have different kind of colors. We say, oh, you have brown eyes, oh, you have green eyes, oh, you have blue eyes. Oftentimes, there's little subtle differences in that iris, which again I think that's very beautiful. Yeah. Okay. This is showing you what's happening with those ciliary muscles in that ciliary body stretching. I don't know. Let's see. I can't remember. Sorry, my lovely computer is not letting me do what I wanted to do here. All right, so outer layer, right, friends? The outer tunic, that's the sclera and that cornea, the white of your eye and that clear front part that's over the pupil. The middle tunic is that choroid body, right, which provides the blood vessels, and then also makes it dark, as well as the iris, right, and the ciliary bodies. And now we're moving into that inner tunic, which consists of the retina. And you've all heard of the retina, right? That's what everyone thinks of, how the eyes work is the retina. This is that innermost layer that contains the actual receptors, the rods and cones, which we'll talk about those in a moment here. The actual receptors that get the light, the change happens in them to send the signal to the brain. And that covers the back side of the eye, basically up to the ciliary body. If you look back at this picture, you can see that the yellow layer is the retina. And you see how it's kind of from here all the way around, again, to about here. It stops and starts at the ciliary body. Because, of course, no light is getting to that upper, innermost part of the eye. It's just on the backside as it comes in through the pupil, right? In the center of that retina is the place that they call the fovea centralis, the central focus, the central point in the eye. And that's the point where you have the sharpest vision. So if something moves off on the side of your eyes, off the side in your peripheral vision, what do? You turn and you look at it, right? I take the parts of my eyes, because this outside of my eyes are still seeing. I can still see what's happening around here. But I need to turn and look, and that's when I get my sharpest vision. Because that fovea centralis is where the most of the cones are, these rods and cones. And again, we'll talk about those in just a moment here. Okay? If I take you back to the picture, fovea centralis is right there. Okay? Just above where that nerve comes in. And it makes sense, right? Isn't this about, if I draw a line, it's a pretty direct line going into the eye. If that's a terribly unstraight line, wow, that's impressive. Impressively terrible. That it would go right in, that's not much better, is it? Imagine that was a straight line. And it's basically, if you turn and look your eye directly at something, it goes right onto that fovea centralis. Okay? The place of your sharpest vision. Just below, or just medial to that fovea centralis is what they call the optic disc. And this is a spot where actually you're blind. You can't see on this spot, this optic disc spot. Why? Why do you think you can't see? And it's right here. This optic disc is this space right here. Because there's no retinal tissue. What tissue is right there? The nerves and the blood vessels. Does that make sense? You can't have those receptor tissue, those receptor cells on those nerve or blood vessel tissues. You have to have that retinal tissue to have those cells. So because there's no retina there, it technically is a blind spot.
So what does that mean for our vision?
Again, the way that our vision works, we do all that we can to keep the light from going on that spot. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that there's some spot here. I suppose, theoretically, if I could not move my eyes, there would be some area where you could not see. You know, because again, there's no receptors there. But your brain has learned to keep your eye moving in a way that light doesn't fall on that spot. Now, your eyes are always moving slightly. Even if I just sit and look at you, my eyes are moving just tiny little bits for that reason. And the large cavity of the eye is filled with this vitreous humor. Vitreous is like a jelly. You know, I always think of Shrek. You can squeeze the jelly out of your eyes. Oh, it's good on toast. Yeah. So again, aqueous humor in the front, right? This liquid, this watery liquid, and then the vitreous humor in the back. Okay, anterior cavity, posterior cavity. Any questions there? I think that's anatomically all I wanted to cover. We're going to go into how the light actually gets in and using the lens and that kind of stuff. But any questions there on that anatomy of this lovely eye? All of those terms now on that diagram you should be comfortable with as far as what. Look on page 284. I was going to pull one of these up. It's not on my slideshow. This picture of the inside of your eye, the picture of the retina. Can you see that on 284? Yeah, you got the blood vessels coming out. But can you see that big yellow spot? What is that? It is. That's the optic disc. Because again, that's where the nerve tissue is. And all the blood vessels, you can see all those blood vessels all go back to that one spot. Yeah. That is the, and then the darker spot, what do you think that is? It does look like the sun.
Wait, is that what it's like shaped like? Is that round?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, this is, imagine you're looking into a cave, like a perfectly circular cave, which is what your eye is. That's just what you'll see. That's on 284. What is this dark spot that's there? Any ideas? See if I can't pull this up here for you. No. This is the one. So this spot right here, I would assume that's a fovea centralis. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I would think. Remember, this is the spot where all that you got more of these cones and rods. So let's talk about that. How this works when that light comes in. All right. So light waves, when they enter the eye, sorry, the formatting is off here. The light waves have to be bent. Are you comfortable? It's going into your eye, and it passes through that lens, and the lens takes and focuses it. Where is it trying to focus it to? To the back, the fovea centralis, right? The place where you have the sharpest vision, where you see the clearest, right? And both the cornea, remember the cornea is the outermost transparent layer, and the lens, they bend the light waves so that they are focused on the retina. Are you with me? And in that retina are these two kinds of receptors, the cones and the rods. And you've heard these before, right? The rods are more sensitive, and they function very well in dim light. And those produce colorless vision. The black and white are rods. Whereas the cones, well, so I was showing you a picture. This is actually like the picture of the eye if you sliced it. So you see the sclera, right, the outermost layer, the choroid coat, the middle layer, and then here, now we're into the inside layer of the retina. And you can see here are the receptor cells, the rods and cones, and here are the nerves that are attached to those receptor cells, right? So the rods are the colorless light, but see better, right? More sensitive. The cones provide sharper images, and they enable you to see in color. So it's easy to remember. Cones see, color see, right? Cones are for color. Rods are for black and white. This one? It can be a difficulty with those cones. Yes.
The diagram for the books is switch. So the rods are elongated.
Yeah, elongated rods, blunt-shaped cones.
Tell me. I think it's diagram C on page
This one?
285. Yeah, it looks like the cones are elongated.
So longer, shorter. That's just an actual scanning scanning microscope picture of actually a rod and a cone. Yes, the cones do look larger, but I think that's just the perspective of it. Okay. And again, we've already talked about this, but to see something in detail, a person moves their eye so that the image falls right on that fovea centralis, which again has the highest concentration. And the further away from that fovea centralis you get, the less cones you have. You ever been like in the dark, like it's almost dark, and you see something move out here, but then you turn and look and you can't see it? Sure, because again, you're now looking with cones instead of with the rods. The rods, remember, are more sensitive to light. So especially in the dark, sometimes it's actually you have better vision in your periphery than you do if you focus on it. Yes, ma'am?
So when people need glasses or their eyesight's bad,
There's a bunches of difficulties with that, but often it's the lens. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, of how that lens changes shape to accommodate viewing close things and viewing far things. Yeah.
also you see the double vision?
I don't know. I know it's, it can be, because of course realize, friends, that your eyes are seeing two different things, right? You have what we call stereo vision, right? You're seeing two separate things and your brain takes and melds it into one image. Like if you keep bringing your hand close enough and I still keep my focus out there, I can see two different hands. You know what I mean? Keep moving it closer. Right, and then smacking your neighbor on the hand, right? Is that right? No, but truthfully, if I'm focused on the wall and I bring my hand closer, you'll start to see the images will blur, right? You'll see different, multiple hands. So I don't know if it's a focusing issue. Sometimes traumatically, if I've hit my head, I get this blurred vision. That's about the best I can do for you. About what? Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. Okay. Here again's your picture. Shh. What do you notice if you just look at the nerves attached to these? Because this is a series of 5 rods and a series of 3 cones. What do you notice?
The nerves and the rods look like they interconnect.
They're connected. Do you remember what that's called?
That's like in one. That's the
Convergence. Excellent. That they have 5 of these things. And notice even there's only 3 nerves connected to all 5. And those 3 nerves then come into one nerve, go to the brain. Right? Whereas these guys all have their individual nerves going back. So does that make sense that those would be more sensitive? For finer details? You know? It's like the big, huge pixels versus the very small pixels. You know? How if you, like I've noticed if I go back to my old phone, now that I've gotten used to my 6 Plus iPhone, if I go back and look at the screen on my iPad or my old phone, you're like, wow, it's not nearly as clear because the pixels are bigger, right? Good.
Can it get to the point where the pixels are so small that wouldn't make a difference?
Yes, we're there. Yeah, we're there. Yeah.
You can't get there.
They're going to still keep making them. And so I guess theoretically, but no, we're already at the point where our eyes can't tell the difference between the pixels. Yeah. All right, so a little bit about how, are we 50? Never mind. I'm going to stop you there. We'll continue on. Yes.